Have you ever heard someone ask, how can a loving God send people to hell? It's one of the hardest questions to comprehend. And honestly, it should be. Because if God is love and hell is real, how do those two fit together? Let's slow down and think about it. First, the question assumes a tension between two core attributes of God. God is love, infinitely compassionate, merciful, desiring relationship with us, but God is also just, perfectly holy, perfectly righteous. And justice means evil cannot simply be ignored. If a judge lets criminals walk free with no consequence, we wouldn't call that loving. We'd call that corrupt. So how can God be both perfectly loving and perfectly just? Christians say the cross is the answer to that tension. But what about hell? Maybe we need to rethink what hell actually is. Most people picture hell like a cartoon. A red devil with a pitchfork, God angrily throwing people into fire. But that's not how historic Christian theology describes it. There are three main ways Christians have understood hell. The first is this: hell is separation from God, not God forcing people away, but God honoring their final decision to live without Him. Imagine the sun. To one person, the sun is warmth, light, life. To another person with a severe allergy, that same sun burns and feels unbearable. The sun hasn't changed. The condition of the person determines the experience. In this view, God is the source of all goodness, beauty, joy, love. Heaven is being in His presence. But if someone has spent their entire life saying, I don't want God, I don't want His authority, I don't want His rule, then eternity in His presence wouldn't feel like paradise. It would feel unbearable. C.S. Lewis once said, the doors of hell are locked on the inside. In other words, hell is not God dragging people somewhere against their will. It's God saying, if you truly do not want me, I will not force you. The second view some Christians hold is called annihilationism. This view says hell is not eternal torment, but final destruction. Those who reject God eventually cease to exist. The second death is literal. It tries to preserve the idea that God does not sustain people in eternal suffering. Then there's the historic majority view, eternal conscious separation. This view says hell is real, conscious, and eternal. Not because God is cruel, but because He is holy. Sin against an infinite God carries eternal weight. And this is where the cross becomes central, because Christianity teaches that Jesus took that consequence upon Himself for anyone who would believe. But here's the key to understanding all of this. Love requires choice. You cannot force someone to love you. If God is the source of all goodness, then eternity has only two logical possibilities: being with Him or being without Him. There is no neutral middle ground. There is no pleasant godless paradise, because everything that makes paradise good comes from God. So what if allowing hell isn't cruelty? What if it's the ultimate act of respecting human freedom? God does not force relationship. He does not force worship. He does not override your will. C.S. Lewis put it this way: there are only two kinds of people in the end: those who say to God, Thy will be done, and those to whom God says, Thy will be done. Then we come to the cross. The same God who allows hell is the God who entered human history and said, I will take the cost on myself. On the cross, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Christians believe that in that moment, He stepped into the separation so we wouldn't have to. No one goes to hell because they weren't good enough. The Christian claim is this: people are separated from God because they reject the cure that was offered at infinite cost. So maybe the question isn't, how can a loving God send people to hell? Maybe it's, how can a loving God force people to be with Him forever if they don't want Him? Heaven is being with God for those who want Him. Hell is being without God for those who don't. The tragedy isn't that God is cruel. The tragedy is that many look at the cross, look at the sacrifice, look at the open door, and still say, no, thank you. And God, with a grieving heart, says, Thy will be done. So here's my question for you. What do you think?